The NFL season is finally here, so make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. It gives you the most live NFL games all in one place, exactly what you need to make your Sundays more magical. Sign up today at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast Dives. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Dives, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. This is like Christmas. Week 1 is in the books. A lot of winners. There are some losers like Florida State, but can't wait to get into it.
All right. I'm also joined by his co-host on Party on Broad, Ryan. Give him a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Football is in full swing. We had a great week 1 in college football. Pro football, NFL is about to start in a couple of days here, and we have an amazing slate of games coming up for week 2 here. So I'm loving it.
All right. And last, but certainly not least, unless you're going off of player of the week projections from last week, I'm joined by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, how are you doing?
Don't listen to my player picks, which is what the podcast is about. But I did say Georgia was going to beat the crap out of Clemson, and I was right there. So listen to my actual picks, but my player picks,
I do want to add Mark killed it last week. Killed it.
That was the promo clip for last week's episode too. By the way, it was your factoid about the transfer portal and saying that 43-3 or whatever you said was on the table. So Mark did kill that one for sure.
Yeah, I had the best college football gambling weekend of my life, probably. So it was a 9-1 Saturday. I think one of those was baseball, so probably an 8-1 college football Saturday. So I'm bound to get a lot wrong this upcoming week.
All right, so fade Mark this week, perhaps. But before we get to Raz Mark anymore about the player of the week predictions, we're going to kick the show off as we normally do with our Eagles draft targets of the week. All right. Eagles prospect profiles of the week. Each week, we're each going to give you one player to keep an eye on, somebody we think the Eagles could potentially be interested in come the NFL draft. Mark, I'll throw it to you first. Who do you have for your prospect profile this week?
I have a guy who I'm kind of already falling in love with. And I have a guy who I think is being projected in the middle to back end of the first round. And I think he should be in the conversation for the number one pick overall right now. And I think it's crazy the lack of love for him I'm seeing. It's Deone Walker from Kentucky, defensive tackle. He's 6'6", 348 pounds. And when you watch him, there is just no planet that a guy that's 6'6", 348 should move the way he does. And he's everything you want in terms of a defensive tackle. He is an absolute beast in terms of stuffing the run, but you don't have to project pass rushing. You don't have to say, oh, if he gains this. He is an incredible pass rusher. He was the best pass rusher in terms of the interior pass rushers last year in all of college football. Now he's back this year. And not to mention, this is something I always talk about when we talk about defensive linemen. This isn't a guy on Georgia. And not to say that I'm not to say I'm against taking Georgia defensive linemen. I love Jalen Carter. I think it's a case-by-case thing. But this is a guy on Kentucky where the entire offense knows this is who you focus on. He's getting doubles thrown at him constantly, and he's still making it happen. I believe he had 7.5 sacks last year, 12.5 tackles for loss. He's got a really high motor. It seems like the only negative that people say is that he plays too tall, but I think that length is what allows him to be such a great pass rusher from the inside. So if there's some snaps that maybe he plays a little too tall in, I'll trade that for the upside that I think that length gives him. So I don't really understand why this guy's not in the conversation with James Pierce and others for the number one pick of the draft.
All right. That's some bold praise there from Mark. Mark, as soon as you said, I'm starting to fall in love with this guy, my mind immediately went to tall defensive linemen.
Absolutely. But usually it's an end. This time it's a little different. As a tackle, 6'6", it's that's stuff you don't see. That's a unicorn.
Yeah. All right. So there you have it. Deone Walker out of Kentucky. Dibes, who is your prospect profile of the week?
I'm looking at our defensive line rankings, and Deone Walker was in our top 10, Ryan, for defensive lineman. He is a flat-out stud. I'm going to go game of the week. I know we're going to be talking about it in a little bit, but give me Colston Loveland, a one-man army for the Michigan Wolverines. He is the lifeblood of this offense. Really came into his own in 2023. In week one, he had 8 receptions for 87 yards and a score. You look back at last year, 88.7% open target rate. That ranked in the 95th percentile among FBS tight ends. He also had the highest yards per route run among returning tight ends as well. As a prospect, this guy is an elite athlete, 6'5", 245 pounds, nearly unguardable due to his physical tools and measurables. He's a smooth athlete. He's got exceptional explosiveness. His change of direction as a route runner is off the charts, and he's got a great route tree with next level agility. You just watch some highlights, and the way this guy can just bounce off the line of scrimmage, man, just a rare find for a tight end prospect. But he's not just an athlete. He's got great hands. He can make high difficulty passes up the seam in contested situations. You know, if Michigan has a chance at beating the Longhorns this weekend, I expect Colston Loveland to have a monster game. Negative-wise, he's not a great run blocker, but his receiving ability, his athleticism are just so elite that it kind of just makes it very much forgettable. I think for comparison purposes, Colston Loveland is just a smidge below Brock Bowers as a tight end prospect. I think he's easily tight end 1 ahead of Mitchell Evans and Oscar Delt. And if this guy was available for the Eagles in the first round, would I consider drafting him? You're goddamn right I would. He would be a high-level tight end 2 behind Goddard and would be just an unbelievable tight end 1 for the Eagles' future. Give me Colston Loveland times 1,000. I love this guy.
I think he's going to be a top 10 pick, by the way. And something I just wanted to throw out there because I didn't say it. Deone Walker's playing South Carolina. So that's why I picked him, kind of an SEC game. But Loveland, huge game for him coming up against Texas. You're absolutely right. If they have any chance, that he's going to have to be a huge factor in that game against Texas.
Yeah, I love that the Eagles signed Jack Stoll to their practice squad, and since then we're 2 for 2 with doing prospect profiles of tight ends. So, I had RJ Maryland last week. Dibes has Colston Loveland this week.
Dude, the way he comes off the line of scrimmage, just watch the videos. Just go on Twitter, go on YouTube. Like he is a next level athlete.
Yeah. If we could ever get Ryan to stop profiling linebackers, he would be on the tight end train too, because we all know how much he loves Jack Stoll, but I don't see that happening. So Ryan, what linebacker do you have for us this week?
Listen, I'll take the tight end, route next week, so we can all just rotate. But you're right. I do have a linebacker, and I picked one from Mark's Notre Dame, and that's Jack Kaiser. This is a guy who led Notre Dame last week against Texas A&M in tackles. He is just honestly just a consistent just tackler, leader. Everything he does, you see it every single play. He's a guy that can play anywhere. He's a guy that also last year actually won Notre Dame Special Teams Player of the Year. He's a guy that just oozes just intelligence, instinct, and sound quality. Fundamentals. Honestly, he's not going to do anything that makes you say, "Wow, like what a crazy athlete." But he's the guy that's going to get a tackle. He's the guy that's an effective blitzer. He's a guy that'll play special teams for you. He's a guy that'll do anything that you ask of him, and he is the clear leader out there for Notre Dame. And everything kind of, again, we talked about Xavier Watts last week, but Kaiser, I feel like is the heart and soul of this defense. And he just is just an amazing an ability to hit that hole and get the tackle. He certainly isn't the biggest guy out there. As it says, right there, he tends to kind of fumble against some bigger tight ends in coverage, but overall, he's just a guy that I don't know. You see it when you look at his film. He's just consistent every single time. I don't know. I just love that in a linebacker. So give me Jack Kaiser. Maybe right now he's probably a early day 3 guy. Again, long season, things can certainly change, but I like him to kind of rise up my draft board for sure.
All right. And that brings us to the final Eagles prospect profile. That'll be my guy, edge rusher Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. I knew I had to do this guy fast before Mark did.
Oh, I love him. I did him last year.
Love him.
Yeah, I do kind of remember that. Actually, the picture reminds me of you doing him last year, but I had to do him because he's an edge rusher who's 6'7", and Mark was going to get that. Like, I'm surprised we made it to week 2 and he hadn't yet, but 6'7", 281 pounds. He's a 4-star recruit who started his career at LSU before he transferred to Arkansas for the 2022 season. He broke out in 2023 with 13.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, and he was named, this is interesting, he was named first team All-SEC by the coaches, but second team All-SEC according to the AP. I did not realize there were 2 different all-conference teams until I was writing this profile. I don't know which one they actually normally announce. So I didn't know if I should call him first or second team, but regardless, he was all conference last year. He's huge, obviously, but I think he's got pretty good bend for his size. He's a toolsy player. He explodes off the line at the snap sometimes. He's got pretty good hand usage, I think, and he's a strong edge setter in the run game. Overall, I think he's like a high motor, high IQ player that has a lot of tools, but he is inconsistent with that snap timing. I mean, sometimes he's off the ball quick, sometimes he's not. And so he needs to get more consistency there. He needs to develop some more pass rush moves. I think he struggles with his pad level at times. And again, his length doesn't help that. But right now he's being projected as like a late day 1, early day 2 pick. This is the type of player that teams will find a reason to talk themselves into. He has a small sample size as an impact player. last season, but if he keeps it up, he's going to fly up draft boards as the season rolls along. So Landon Jackson out of Arkansas is my pick. Mark, you love the guy, obviously, because he's over 6'5". What did I miss?
No, you did a great job. I covered him last year on the show, and he decided to go back to school. He's a guy who I would have liked as a probably maybe a late first, early second. And I think he's probably right back in that conversation this year. So I'm all in on Landon Jackson.
We did a top 10 defensive lineman ranking before the season started, and just to goes to show you how deep the defensive lineman is in the 2025 NFL draft. He wasn't on my preseason ranking. Landon Jackson should be a first-round talent by the end of the draft process.
All right. So there you have it. 4 guys you can keep an eye on as you're watching games that maybe you will hear the Eagles call their name come draft season. But now we're going to transition into our player of the week predictions. All right, player of the week predictions. Before we get into our predictions for this week, we have to recap last week. Last week, Dibes selected running back Devin Neal from Kansas, who had 8 carries for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 48-3 win over Lindenwood. We gave him first place, so he gets 3 points for the week. Ryan had quarterback Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma, who was 17-25 for 141 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also rushed for 34 yards in a 51-3 win over Temple. I mean, Ryan, I think the bottom line is if Temple wasn't such garbage, then Jackson Arnold would have had to put up some more numbers and you would have won this thing. So Dibes got the win over you here because his team stinks. Maybe you can.
Linwood is a powerhouse. What are we talking about here?
Oh, no, I'm just saying if Temple was better, Jackson Arnold would have had to keep scoring touchdowns, but that unfortunately didn't happen.
I do want to say I was fair on my show with the college football preview where I gave a tie because I thought Jackson Arnold hit some unbelievable throws with pressure in his face over and over and over again against Temple. I just want to throw it out there. I'm just throwing it out there.
Devin Neal ran for like 12 yards a carry.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Dibes brought that tie stuff in here and I said, no ties. This isn't soccer. We're not having ties. So
there's no participation award.
So I made Mark pick the winner since he was in last place with Kyron Drones. But so Ryan got second place. He gets 2 points. I got third. I get a point for Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, who had 30 carries for 129 yards. He also had 17 receiving yards in a 19-17 win over Minnesota. Mark takes last with Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech, 22-33 for 322 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He also rushed for 19 yards in an overtime loss to Vanderbilt. So we will keep a running total throughout the season. We'll let you guys know the standings as we go. But let's get into this week's player of the week predictions. Mark, lead us off. Who do you got?
I'm going with the Penn Stater for the locals out there. I'm going with Nicholas Singleton, and I thought he looked incredible in week 1 against West Virginia. I thought Penn State was one of the most impressive teams in the country, and they played West Virginia. This week, they get Bowling Green. They're a 34.5-point favorite. I think they're going to put up like 50, 60 points. So maybe he doesn't get, maybe this is a bad pick by me because maybe he only gets 10 to 15 carries and he's out of there by the second half. But I think he will do a lot with those carries. And he didn't even get that many in week 1. He got 13 carries for 114 yards, 8.8 yards a carry. He had a long touchdown run. And you look at his kind of college career, and it's been interesting. He's still only 20 years old, which is funny to say because it feels like he's been around forever. He doesn't turn 21 still for a couple of months. His first year as a true freshman at Penn State, he had 1,061 yards, 6.8 yards per carry, and 12 touchdowns. And I think people really expected him to build on that last year. And he kind of didn't. He only had 752 yards. He had about 250 less yards while having 15 more carries. He dipped from 6.8 yards per carry to 4.4 yards per carry, and from 12 touchdowns to 8 touchdowns. The one positive you can point to is last year he took a step as a receiver. He had 26 catches for 308 yards and 2 touchdowns, where he had been a bit of a non-factor in that before. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of gets used as a receiver, because I think if he is a legitimate receiver, he can be a 3-down back at the next level. I think he can be a blocker with his size, and he's obviously a great runner on first and second down. So comes down to if he can be a consistent receiver like he showed it at times last year. But man, when he hits the open hole, I believe there was a tweet that he got to 22 miles per hour, which he didn't hit all of last year. So I think there was some buzz that maybe he was a little banged up at certain points last year, which maybe could point to why he had that drop off in efficiency. I think he's got a big game coming and a big year coming here with Penn State's offense taking a leap under new offensive coordinator from Kansas, who did a great job with Dives guy, Devin Neal, last year at Kansas. I think he'll do the same with Singleton this year.
All right. So Nicholas Singleton from Mark. Dibes, who is your pick this week?
Yeah, Andy Kotelnicki looks like he's unlocked this Penn State offense. Quick shout out to those playing the home game. Harrison Wallace III looks like a major breakout player as a wide receiver. We talked about Penn State a lot and who's going to step as the skill position guy for Penn State. Harrison Wallace III. If you're looking at a player of the week prediction, keep an eye out for him. He had 8 targets in week 1 and could be Drew Allar's best friend. But man, this one comes home for me a little bit because we've been doing this for a while, and I'm going to go with a guy that lived up to expectations and then some. I thought he was a first-round talent in last year's draft. I would have taken him over J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. He decided to return and go to Miami. We're talking about Cameron Ward. Cameron Ward was absolutely dominant week 1, using his feet, using his arm, extending plays. He scored on Miami's 6 of their first 8 drives. Man, like this was his first game. He had touchdowns on 5 of their first 8 drives. And he finished with 26 of 35 passing, a completion percentage of 74%, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 carries for 33 yards. As a prospect, he doesn't have a lot of size, but he's got elite arm talent, man. This is a guy that can make throws that nobody else can do in this draft. Because I will say Nico Iamaleava is probably the best pound for pound, best college football prospect there is. But if we're talking about 2025, Cam Ward is elite as it gets. His change of direction ability is outstanding. And Miami plays Florida A&M this weekend. The Rattlers are 2-0, but have won both games by a combined 5 points against Norfolk State and South Carolina State. The chemistry between Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo, who I think is an underrated wide receiver prospect, he's going to put up monster yards this year, is elite as it gets. So give me Cam Ward putting up probably another game of 300, 400 yards and an easy win for Miami. Miami is legit, man. They're really good.
I just said on my college football pod that I recorded right before this show that I'm shocked Cam Ward is not the Heisman favorite. I think he's 4th or 5th still in odds. He's plus 850, 950, something in that range. There's Dylan Gabriel's above him at Oregon. There's a couple other players above him. I do not understand how Cam Ward, after that showing in a big spot in a standalone game that everybody was watching on national TV, he should be the Heisman favorite. And that's coming from a guy. I've got a Nico ticket at 16-1. So I'm hoping that Nico's the Heisman and he'll have a spot this week against NC State to answer. But I think Cam Ward, if I was making kind of my prediction right now, he should be the favorite.
I'm telling you, those are probably my 2 favorite quarterbacks in this draft, Nico and Cam Ward.
Yeah, Nico's a stud.
He's so good, man.
All right. Ryan, where are you going for player of the week this week? You're muted, though.
Computer problems.
About that. Yeah, that'll happen. So we're going to go up to Columbus, Ohio, and I'm going to go with Will Howard, Ohio State quarterback. Last week, he did some damage against the Akron Zips. 17 for 28, 228, and 3 touchdowns. Also ran for 18 yards on the ground. He just looked comfortable in this offense. You know, he has our favorites, former head coach Chip Kelly as his O coordinator there. But he really does look the part there at Ohio State. And, you know, he has an upcoming game against Western Michigan. The Broncos there don't really stand too much of a chance. So I expect Howard to get a lot of throws, get a lot of touchdowns early, and probably sit in the fourth quarter, but still put up pretty gaudy numbers against those Broncos. So I just enjoy this offense. They certainly don't seem to know how to figure out the running back situation there yet. But they'll eventually figure it out. But before they do, I'll pick Will Howard before the running backs take over that Ohio State offense. So.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Think you know the Brooks Ghost? Think again. Introducing the all-new, better-than-ever Ghost 16. Now with nitrogen-infused cushioning for lightweight, supreme softness that feels good every step, every street, every single day. So go ahead, take your daily joyride in the all-new nitrogen-infused Ghost 16. It'll turn your everyday miles into everyday endorphins. Let's run there. Head to brooksrunning.com to learn more.
All right. There you have it. I'll go last here with my player of the week prediction. I'm going back to the same game that I took a Eagles target in, which is actually the second time in 3 weeks I've done that. 2 picks from the same game, but just where my head's at, I guess. I'm going to go with running back Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. He is coming off of a 27 carry for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns performance against South Dakota State last week. He also had 42 receiving yards and a touchdown through the air. So 3 total touchdowns, 150 all-purpose yards. He's going to face off against Arkansas in Stillwater Saturday at noon. Actually, a game that my daughter is going to go to, her first football game. She's going to go with the grandparents for this one. They're OSU alumni. So we'll be rooting on Ollie Gordon for her in that game. And I went ahead and just decided I would tie the sentimental value of it to my player of the week prediction too. And then I can guilt trip you guys if you don't vote him to win next week. So there we go. You can watch Ollie Gordon against Arkansas Saturday in the early games.
I'll be locked in. Oklahoma State -7, one of my favorite plays of the week. I really, really like Oklahoma State -7, and I like the over as well in that game.
All right. And while you're watching that, keep an eye on Landon Jackson. So there you go.
I'll be mad that I can't cover him the rest of the year. I'll be like, I can't believe Shane did this.
Yeah, I know. It's 'cause I think all of us here love Landon a little bit in our own right. I know Dives. I know we've talked about him all last year. leading up to the draft. So it's good we get to still see him and see his growth.
Hey, if he vaults up into like a potential top 10 pick, I'll let you cover him again. I remember last year in our chats, Dibes said he was going to cover Danny Stutzman. And I was like, no, you're not. You don't get to cover an OU player on this show. We only have 2 of them that are potential draft picks, and I get dibs on both. So
nice.
All right, well, let's turn the page now and talk about our game of the week breakdown. For our game of the week breakdown, we go to Michigan, where number 9 Michigan plays host to number 4 Texas at noon on Fox. So let's be honest, most of you guys aren't going to watch that OSU game at noon we just talked about. But Texas is a 6.5 point favorite in this game, at least as of the time I wrote down the numbers. Michigan lost 13 players to the 2024 NFL draft, the most of all schools last year. They also lost their head coach. And so a lot of turnover at Michigan. These teams had radically different experiences in week 1. Texas beats Colorado State 52-0. Arch Manning gets his first touchdown pass. Meanwhile, Michigan struggled with Fresno State. They win 30-10, but they only led 13-3 going into the fourth quarter, and they sort of pulled away there at the end. This is going to be a matchup of Texas's explosive offense versus Michigan's stellar defense. Mark, do you got money on this game? What do you expect to see? Talk to me about the Longhorns and the Wolverines.
No, and it's even bumped up to a 7.5 point spread, and so much money's pouring in on Texas. Everyone watched Michigan in week 1 really disappoint against Fresno State. And Texas, on the other hand, looked great against Colorado State. So it's hard to ignore that. Michigan's defense is really good, though, and I'm pretty low on Michigan. I think they're an 8-9 win team. I don't think they're a playoff team, but they may have lost maybe like the depth on their roster. You look at how many guys got drafted. They still have, Will Johnson, Mason Graham, those guys are potential top 10 picks. And, Colston Loveland's a high pick. Barham's a high pick. Kenneth Grant, you're shuffling through them right now for the people watching along. And they have just still a ton of high level NFL draft prospects. So it's hard for me to ignore that. I think that there's a chance Michigan can muddy this game up in the big house. It's going to be interesting kind of to see. I think a couple quarterbacks have big tests this week, and Quinn Ewers, I think we find out more in this game than we will the rest of the year even. A road game in the big house against one of the best defenses, a great secondary. Will Johnson obviously might be the best player in the country. So I think we'll find out a lot about Quinn Ewers in this ball game. So I'm predicting, like I said, 24-17 Texas, which kind of is like a sellout because the lines bump between 6.5 to 7.5 points. So it's a little bit of a cop out to say that, but everyone thinks a Texas beatdown. I'm hoping that it's a Texas beatdown, but there's something in the back of my head saying Michigan will keep it a little closer than people think.
All right. Dibes, how do you feel about this game? Which way are you leaning?
I'm pretty close to Mark. There's a lot of storylines to talk about here. I agree with Mark. Like they don't have the depth on defense that they did last year, but the quality is through the roof. Mason Graham, Will Johnson, those are 2 guys that are probably top 10 picks. Yeah. You look at Jayshon Barham, who I think is a breakout star. He's a transfer out of Maryland, a linebacker that I know Ryan will be mocking to the birds quite a bit. Kenneth Grant is another phenomenal defensive tackle prospect that could be a first-round pick. That duo with him and Mason Graham are probably the top 2 duo defensive tackles in the country. But at the end of the day, it's about this Michigan offense and who the hell is this quarterback for the Michigan Wolverines. Davis Warren. We talked a lot about Alex Orji, who looked like the front runner for a lot of weeks. and is not the guy. I think he's still going to get some snaps as, what we kind of saw the role with J.J. McCarthy last year. He's going to be their like a rusher, a gimmick kind of quarterback. But Davis Warren is the guy. He didn't look great against Fresno State last Saturday. 15 of 25 passing, 118 yards, a touchdown, a pick. He managed the game, making a lot of safe throws. All but 3 of his 25 attempts in week 1 came less than 9 yards. He was 0 of 3 on deep passes, and one of those interceptions was on a deep pass on an underthrow. So let's be real. This quarterback for Michigan, he ain't ready. He ain't ready. Like this is going to be bad. And when you look at Texas, there's so many storylines to watch. Calvin Banks, he is a top 10 pick. He's a tackle for the Longhorns. Isaiah Bond, he's a first-round talent. Quinn Ewers, we could go on and on about how deep this group. I want to talk about a guy that I think is a breakout star, and he is Anthony Hill, a linebacker, the next one up for the Longhorns. A really fun prospect. He was voted the best freshman outside of Caleb Downs. And if you follow the show last year, we raved and raved and raved about Caleb Downs of Alabama, who then transferred to Ohio State. He led the Texas Longhorns in tackles in week 1. Anthony Hill is a sophomore, but he will be he's replacing Jalen Ford at that middle linebacker position for the Texas Longhorns. So keep an eye out for Anthony Hill, who looks every bit like a major first-round talent in a year or two.
By the way, on the Michigan quarterback point, I would gain so much respect for Sharon Moore if they trot out Orgy this week and just do a full-on like triple option, run the ball every play,
Sure.
ball control offense. I think that's the way that they would have to win this game. And if they just came out and were like, "Yeah, we didn't want to show it in week 1. It's a triple option. We didn't want them to know we were going to run it." I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be genius.
Yeah, I do want to say I think Michigan keeps it close, like Mark said, but I think Texas's offense is too good. They'll make a big play here or there to really push the lead. I'll say Texas wins 27, Michigan 20, and player of the game, it's going to be Quinn Ewers. It's going to be Quinn Ewers. Just like we saw in that Alabama matchup early on in 2023. Give me Quinn Ewers.
I'll throw this question to Dibes. Who has a bigger question, or who has a bigger weekend as a draft quarterback, Quinn Ewers or Shedeur Sanders?
Quinn Ewers. I think Nebraska's defense is – I'm a Matt Rule guy. Come on. Like, I'm a Temple guy. So give me Matt Rule all day, every day. But I think Nebraska's defense is really good. They return 8 starters from last year. It depends on what we get out of that Nebraska young quarterback. He's like 19 years old against Shedeur. But I think we talked about this on Sunday, but give me Nebraska upsetting Colorado this week. So I really like Nebraska's defense and Matt Rule.
They're 7.5-point favorite, Dibes. Nebraska.
Are they really?
Drink the big red juice. I'm all in, and I'm laying the 7.5 points. I think
Colorado's so overrated, man. They're so overrated.
Their defense stinks.
All right, Ryan, what's your take on the game of the week, which again is Texas at Michigan?
Right.
Just so you remember there. What's your take on this one?
I was like, I don't know. Are we talking about the Sanders? But no, listen, this is such a great matchup. Obviously, Texas, went out there and did what great teams are supposed to do, dominate in all facets of the game. And yeah, Michigan, that offense just it's ugly. Honestly, it's just ugly. And they rely on their defense, and they're going to have to rely on their defense this year if they want to make it into the playoffs or even make a mark in the Big Ten. But I'm kind of with Mark and Dibes here that listen, I think Texas is just too strong overall. While they are in the big house and playing in Ann Arbor is something to behold, and they haven't lost there since 2021. I think this is when the streak gets broken. I think Texas ends up winning 31-20. I think they more than cover. I think Michigan even, maybe scores a little late to make it a little closer there. But I'll go with Isaiah Bond as your player of the game. I think yours is going to just give him the ball nonstop, and he is just going to light it up there at the big house. So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Are you done? I don't want to.
Go ahead. Just interject. It's okay.
I know Shane loves himself a good kicker. So I do want to throw this one out there. But Michigan has another elite kicker. You look at Jake Moody, you look at James Turner. The Wolverines have a guy named Dominic Zavada out of Arkansas State, a transfer out of Arkansas State, who hit field goals of 43, 53, and 55 in week 1. Shane, I think I found your boy.
Boo. Yeah, we're talking about transfer kickers on a college football podcast. It's about time to wrap it up.
You interrupted me to talk about a kicker. Come on, man.
On my daughter's wedding, you come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding to talk kickers.
Talk kickers. You need help, my friend. You need help.
It's true.
But anyway,
Shane knows how I feel about kickers. Get rid of them. Get rid of kickers and have quarterbacks throw it through the uprights.
Yeah,
that's
fantasy leagues should get rid of kickers as well.
Oh, I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, Ryan, was there anything else you were going to say on the game, or?
I really wanted to dive into the kicking battle.
Talk to me about Michigan's long snapper.
Yeah. Listen, this guy, he can long snap it 40 yards in the air. Got to watch it. YouTube clips.
Oh, man. Well, that is going to about do it. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the Armchair Scouts. If you enjoyed the show, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all the shows on the Eagles Pinpool Network. We got 6 shows a week. They're coming at you fast this week because we kick off on a Friday night. Be sure you join us for the post-game show right after the Eagles' hopeful victory over the Packers in Brazil on Friday night. Be sure you drop your 3 words on Twitter after the game so we can interact with those on the show. You can check us out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. _. And we will catch you guys next week for another episode of the Armchair Scouts.
Hook 'em.